Welcome to the Self-Publishing School podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you're an aspiring writer or an author who wants to be more successful. On this show, you'll learn how to write and launch a book successfully, all from the top authors and people just like you who are doing it at the highest level. I'm your host, Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, the author of the book called Published, and the CEO of selfpublishing.com. For free training on how to publish a book that sells 10,000 copies, go to selfpublishing.com/free training. Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Mr. Josh Shipp. Josh is a personal friend. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life.
Here we go.
I'm not just saying that.
Here we go.
If you're not familiar with him, you may remember him back from episode 27, if you can believe it, where we talked about writing a timeless book that sells over 500,000 copies. That is not what we're going to be talking about today. If you've never met Josh, he's a former at-risk foster kid turned youth advocate and speaker. He's spoken to over 2 million people live. He's got a viral video with over 50 million views, which I think my mom occasionally texts to me when she sees it come out.
That's sweet. Good.
It's an awesome talk. He's written multiple books, obviously, one of which we talked about last time on the interview. He's been on Oprah. He creates, great companies. He's created an incredible company, multiple top youth speakers and Youth Speaker University. He was kind enough to be, I think if I'm not mistaken, the first ever person to book me to speak at an event.
Oh, here we go.
So always a place in my heart. If it wasn't the first gig, it was the first paid gig.
Oh, we're going to do a full Net Promoter Score breakdown of that performance. I actually have the live footage prepared. Okay, let me share my screen, Chandler. Give me the control of this Zoom. I am taking over.
It was tough. It was tough. It was a learning experience. So the people said it went well. I thought it went pretty poorly. I'm not going to lie, but hey, you learn, you get out there, and you improve. So Josh, welcome. Great to have you here.
Thank you, good sir. Thank you. It's great to be with you. Episode 26, huh? How many are we on now?
Oh my gosh.
See, you got to come prepared, Chandler. You know, I do these gotcha questions to you. You've got to come prepared. What are you doing?
We're like 270. Looks like you're going to be 278.
Okay, fantastic. I love it.
A lot of episodes. So, hey, guys, today we're going to be talking about book and speaking gigs, growing as a speaker, and building an 8-figure speaking business. I'm going to go a little bit. We're going to lay some groundwork, some frameworks, et cetera. Obviously, we've talked about booking, speaking gigs a lot on the podcast. So today I really want to go advanced, and this is a Speaker 201 kind of masterclass. So buckle up. If you want to speak, if you're already speaking, or you want to scale your speaking, this is the guy. And hopefully we can learn a lot in this next little bit. So I guess I'll start a little bit generic and broad, but then we'll quickly ratchet it in here, Josh.
Sounds good.
First off, why speaking from your vantage point? Why is it something that authors should do and that entrepreneurs should do to either sell more books or grow their business?
Yeah, this is something I've been on both sides of, both as a speaker myself and now as someone who's a speaker agent. I run a speaker agency. So as you mentioned, my foray into speaking, I was a foster kid to success story, kind of went around sharing that story to different schools and youth organizations and educators. Did my postgrad in public speaking at Harvard. And so the first 10 years of my career was being front of stage, did over 1,200 speaking gigs, books. The book now sold over 1 million copies, on a bunch of fancy media, did a major television show that was executive produced by Oprah. So everything that I sort of would hope and dream that would happen from speaking happened. And then I sort of pivoted to, booking gigs for upcoming speakers, for upcoming talent. I looked this morning before our conversation. We have booked to date 5,170 paid speaking gigs. Now something, I always want to be very candid, sort of overly candid on where my expertise lies and where it doesn't. So my expertise is booking gigs in front of audiences that are either students or adults that work with students. So some of these things that I will share, I would say would be, say, 70% applicable to a corporate audience, to a business audience. You're going to need to do a little bit of contextualization. Not everything I say will be a fair copy and paste, but I can tell you speaking is such an accelerant to getting your message out there, to booking more gigs, to raising your platform. However, you've got to be very thoughtful and strategic, just like you teach about books. You got to be very strategic and thoughtful about every single element that makes up the speech itself, the demo video of the speech, and then how you go about booking the gigs themselves.
So let's just jump straight into that. This is one of a question I had is media kits and speaker demos. I think there's two sides of the aisle. Some people are like totally worthless, just get in front of a decision maker. And some people would say, hey, this is the most important thing you can do. And this is how you get in front of a decision maker. Where do you lie on that? How important is it? And how do you make a good one?
Okay, so a media kit for booking speaking gigs, my professional opinion, again, having booked 5,170 of them, that is the specific number, completely worthless, completely waste of your time, distraction. Now, if you're wanting to book media appearances, podcast appearances, not my lane of expertise, but I would guess that in that avenue, quite helpful. Our team, our agency, we did a survey of over 1,000 decision makers, and we asked them, one of the questions was, how do you end up making the decision on which speaker that you hire? Now, over 60% of them answered with one of the following three responses. Either I saw them speak in person, someone I trust saw them speak and then emailed me, texted me, gave me a phone call, said, hey, you got to have them at your event, at your school, at your organization, or I saw a video of them speaking. Now, I know at the onset you said this is a bit more of a 201 conversation, but let's acknowledge the challenge if you're in a 101 situation. In the 101 situation, 2 out of the 3 of that decision-making rubric, you're probably not going to have the benefit of. You're not yet going to be out there enough speaking where you can benefit from either there's a decision maker sitting in your audience or that decision maker is one phone call away from the decision maker, which then means all the more even important for the 101 or the 201, which is absolutely nailing what I would call a demo video, which is essentially sort of a movie trailer of your speech. Chandler, am I able to share my screen? I have a storyboard I'd actually like to show you. I'd like to kind of break down what I would call sort of a storyboard of a perfect demo video. So I'm gonna paint what would be the ideal situation, and of course do the best with what you can. But you just heard it in the evidence that, you know, and even with that second category of person, we said, you know, they're one phone call away from the decision maker. Even that person is going to need to watch your video. Okay, so let me just give a real world example. Let's say I'm sitting in an audience watching Chandler speak and I don't know him. Now, if I'm the decision maker, I can sit in that audience, be like, hey, that was a great message. It was practical. I have an event. I am the sole decision maker. I can walk up to him, introduce myself, get his information, and I have the authority to book him from A to Z. Now, if I'm one person away, that means I got to call my boss. And I got to say, hey, boss, I saw this guy. I think he'd be great for our people. And the boss is going to go, okay, for the most part, I trust Josh, but at the end of the day, I'm risking my reputation. Okay, listen to me very carefully. Over 5,000 gigs booked. This has been a big unorthodox epiphany that I've had, which is I used to think event planners were risking a check, and sure, to a certain part they are, but they're really risking their reputation. You know, I think about you, Chandler. You recently had, you know, I forget exactly what you call your event, but the event where you bring together folks, you know, around self-publishing. Think about the reputational damage not only you would face, but also your brand would face if someone came in, they were oversalesy, or they just didn't really deliver much value, or they didn't stay on message. So I imagine even for you, Chandler, even maybe you wouldn't articulate it that way. You are being thoughtful and careful about your brand's reputation and your own personal reputation. Do you think that's a fair case that I'm making?
Very fair. Yep.
Okay. So now let's circle back. If I got to say to my boss, the first thing he's going to do is Google the speaker I mentioned and want to see a video. Because if I come to him and say, Chandler was incredible, he's going to want to see in that video, oh, I agree. Chandler seems incredible. Okay. So even in that category of decision kind of branching, it's important. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can probably see this. If not, I'll kind of John Madden it and talk you through this. So we're going to talk about kind of the ideal setup for your demo video. Now, a couple things about filming your demo video that I see 99% of speakers, well-intended, get wrong. Number one, you need to mic yourself. Duh, you know that. You also need to mic your audience. Okay. If you watch any comedy special and you pause certain moments, you will notice that they have what are known as shotgun mics pointing at the audience. And that is so that they can have a separate feed that's capturing laughter, applause breaks. You know, let's say it's like a comedian that works dirty, those groans, you know, that you get from an audience. It's kind of quite satisfying, part of the back and forth of the comedian. This is so crucial for you as a speaker because as a decision maker watching that, I want to know, okay, if he tells a joke, do I see that audience just like right there with him? You know, if she makes a key point, do I hear that? Oh, you know, so that is really key because otherwise you'll have those key moments. You don't hear it from the audience. And as a decision maker, I go, uh-oh, they think they're funny. The audience doesn't. Uh-oh, they think they're clever. The audience doesn't. All right. So that's an unorthodox thing. Easy to miss. Another one, know in advance where you're going to film, what the background will be, and therefore what sort of clothing you're going to wear. I've seen a lot of speakers sort of, you know, they're in front of a blue stage. They wear a blue shirt. Difficult to see them. You know, you're so excited to film the video. You hired a videographer. Don't screw it up with that. Two other things here. Any key statements you have in your speech, if the day of your filming, you fumble upon these words. So, for example, if I was filming a talk, I speak to adults that work with students. One of my key lines is, every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story. Let's say I accidentally kind of flubbed a line. Well, that is such a key line I know needs to be in my video. Though it would be a bit awkward in front of the live audience, I'm just going to pause and almost out of emphasis, I'm going to repeat it again so I get a clean take. You know, it'll be slightly awkward for the in-person audience. You can kind of play it off as I need to hammer this into your head, but it's crucial for your video. And then lastly, before we get into the storyboard, let me paint the ideal of the ideal scenario of where to capture your talk. Ideal scenario, this is the wish list. In an auditorium or theater, like a nice venue, where the capacity is quite full, meaning 300 seat auditorium, 300 bodies in the room. Not a 300 seat auditorium with 85 people in the room. Because if, again, your perception, your kind of perception determines your reception. So if I'm a decision maker watching that video and I see tons of empty seats, that's going to be 3% kind of ding you in my mind of like, oh, there's must not be something particularly compelling about her content, about this individual's message. And ideally, if you can, do 2 back-to-back speeches. So for example, you know, again, I work with schools, so I often have this luxury, setting up one of my speakers. Hey, it's an 800 student school, 400 person auditorium. We're going to do 2 back-to-back. We're going to do grades 9 and 12, and then 11 and 12, because then you get 2 takes of everything. Okay, so those are some unorthodox things that are pretty easy to miss. Now let's go through this storyboard. You've filmed your full hour keynote. How do you direct your editor? I see so many speakers go, well, I need to hire a quality videographer. You do. And then I'm just going to trust them with the edit. Right. You are an idiot. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. Do not do that. You are the director of this film. The videographer is your director of photography. That's it. Their job is to make it look good, the video sound good, the audio sound good. You know your audience. You know your decision makers. You know your message. You are not going to leave it up to chance for them to control your trailer. You need to. So 4 components, I would say the ideal length, and Chandler, feel free to jump in here, interrupt me, any of that, troll me, whatever you need to do, okay? The ideal video, I'd say, is about 5 minutes in length. In the introduction, 15 seconds. This is where you can have a montage of things to build credibility. So if you've been on Good Morning America or whatever, you could have, again, just spend 15 seconds, a montage of those clips. You know, she's been everywhere. Look at the authority, the credibility. Look at all these still images of different types of stages and groups she's speaking in front of. And then component 2, you need 3 to 4 minutes, very lightly edited, of your most A+ phenomenal content. This is the key and the most important part of your video. Again, they're risking their reputation. You need to show me the thunder. You need to bring the heat immediately. So literally starting at minute 16, as a decision maker, I should be freaking inspired, taking notes, emotionally moved by what I am seeing in front of me. Your very, very best content. Now, you might, skepticisms I hear here. Well, if I put the best stuff, why are they going to book me? This is not your audience watching this video. This is that decision maker, that sole person backstage somewhere that has the authority to put you in front of the 500. This isn't going to spoil your speech. This isn't, so you need your best stuff in here. It doesn't have to be chronological. It doesn't have to be a logical through line. We've seen movies, trailers, and you go, oh, that part kind of in the trailer, it seemed like it's the start of the film, but actually that's like towards the end. So 3 to 4 minutes. Don't do a bunch of jump cuts. Otherwise, they think that you can't hold the audience for long periods of time uninterrupted and keep them engaged. So now we're sitting at about 3 minutes and 15 seconds to 4 minutes and 15 seconds in your 5-minute video. Next movement, we're going to pull in some testimonials. Now, your instinct here might be, let me interview people in the audience. No. Okay, remember you mic the audience. Remember you have B-roll of the audience. So I see them laughing. I heard them clapping. I see them clapping. I get that they were bought in. Okay? What I need to hear from is another person like me, the decision maker, who risked their reputation, the impact of their event, and that check to bring you in, and that it was a phenomenal experience. So we want to hear directly from that person that is a sort of archetyped, I think would be the right word, of the typical person that books you. Okay, so let's take it back to my world. A lot of our speakers work with K through 12 schools. So I don't want to hear from the 11th grader that he thought it was hilarious or moving. And I don't even want to hear from the English teacher, though no doubt she's terrific. I want to hear from the superintendent, the principal, or the assistant principal. That is largely our decision maker, our customer. I want to hear from that lady with the PhD and, the suit. And I want to hear her get hyperbolic and say, I've been in education for 20 years. We've had a lot of folks, but let me tell you. Okay. And then lastly, and this is just kind of a 15-second bookend, just a conclusion of, this could be kind of shaking hands, kissing babies, signing books, these sorts of things. And then just, I like to have a clear tagline here of who you, of your name and what it is that you do. So for example, it might be something like, I'm Josh Shipp and I inspire adults to understand the power of one caring adult, something like that. So that's kind of the storyboard and the breakdown of an ideal demo video. Chandler, maybe any questions you have about contextualizing, I'm more coming from the education world. You're more so coming from the business world. Is there anything in here you would push back on, or you would go, maybe that doesn't work in a business context, or any question you might have of how to contextualize it to a business context?
No, I like it a lot. I think this is really good. I'm taking notes over here for how I level
Good.
up my demo video. So let's maybe go. Let's go. I see we got this other tab, and I'm sure this is a question for a lot
Sure.
of folks.
You're getting distracted with my open tabs, my
Yeah,
man.
the open tab, the speech template. I want to maybe take 30 seconds on the structure of the speech itself, and then I
Yes.
want to go into booking gigs, both first gigs for authors, and then beyond that, we'll do a little case study.
Okay, you're
From
gonna have to
there.
tase me if you're talking about 30 seconds to the ideal speech. Look, all right. I'm gonna first give a quick soapbox sermon, and then you start this 30-second clock. If you start the 30-second clock now, I will punch you. Okay, Chandler,
And
don't
is this
start
going
it
to be
on.
a screen share, or can we unscreen share for this?
Um, let's. I'll screen share now. Okay, but here's the big takeaway. Um, Let me give you the top 5 most important things in order to building a successful speaking business. Ready? Number 1, your speech. Number 2, your speech. Number 3, your speech. Number 4, the demo video of your speech. And number 5, your lead generation to decision makers. Listen, there are a lot. It is way easier, and there are a lot of courses and programs and gurus that are incentivized to get you to focus on the marketing aspect a bit too early. And there are a lot of great courses out there, but some of them you might want to question why they're getting you to do that a little prematurely. Or as a speaker, it is 1,000 times psychologically easier for me to send a cold email, or heck, even a cold phone call, than to do the internal, excruciating, creative work. And sometimes you bring personal baggage on stage. So you're trying to be inspiring, but your bitterness is leaking out. Uh, I'm telling you, the top 3 most important parts are getting your speech right. Because I told you this, the number 4 is the demo video. But the better your speech is, the better your demo video is going to be. So then when you start doing lead generation and you say, hey, could I speak at your event? Take a look at this video. Then that video that they see is going to be all the much better because you did the excruciatingly horrific, terrible work of making your speech phenomenal. Okay. Now we start the 30-second clock. Here's to me kind of the elements of a phenomenal speech. I always like to, number 1, be very clear about who my audience is, what my topic is, and what is my message in 1 sentence. So again, for me, it'd be every kid is one caring adult away from being a success story. Then I have that as a North Star to make sure, does my introduction point to that? Do my main points point to that? Does my conclusion point to that? In the introduction, this is going to be about 10% of your speech. I like to think of this as me, we, you. Me first, grabbing their attention. This is often self-deprecating or throwing yourself under the bus for the good of your audience, telling them how this was a challenge for you. You figured something out, your turning point. Okay. Next, it's important. I see so many folks, I go around, when I spoke to students, I went around telling my kind of soppy foster kid story. Well, if I'm speaking to 500 kids, not every kid is a foster kid. So this we moment, you have to shift and show them, how is my really specific story also relevant to you, even if you're not in foster care and you don't know anybody in foster care? And with this, you need to prove it with data, not more anecdotes. So you need to say, you know what, this percentage of people, blah, 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 either maybe they haven't been abandoned by their parents like I was, but they feel abandoned and alone. And then you start shifting towards you. And this is where you kind of tease what your main points are. Hey, here's what I'm going to walk you through today. because this is not just about my soppy foster kid story. I'm going to tell you 1, 2, and 3. Those become mile markers for the audience so that they know where they are in your message. Imagine when you pull up Google Maps and you type in a destination. At first, it gives you that overhead view. You see the line, it kind of gives you an estimation of the length of time. You see the bird's eye view of where you're headed. That's what that is. So before you hit start, you get into the depth, the turn by turn of the message. I want to know where I am in your message at all times. And so you do that by just teasing in one sentence. We're going to talk about watermelon, strawberries, and grapes. First, let's get into watermelon, okay? And now you get into your main points. This is 70, 80% of your speech. Here I just think problem, here's the story, solution, here's what I figured out. Advice, here's the advice, validated by research. Don't just be anecdotal. And then action, here's something you can specifically, pragmatically do to implement the advice that I gave you. All right, so you wash and repeat that for your main points. The conclusion, quickly summarize the main points. You visualize, imagine what's going to happen if you do what I say or don't do what I say. So you can cast the optimistic point of view, or in some points, you need to kind of sober the audience and kind of spook them and scare them a little bit. Right here, I like to thank the person that hired me. And then if I have something to pitch, I don't always in my context, I'm going to pitch it right there. If I've got an hour speech, I'm doing a pitch at the 55-minute point, because by that point, I've just blown their minds for 55 minutes. So I have absolute authority and credibility. I don't got to do any NLP nonsense or trickery to get them to buy whatever it is that I want them to buy, because I've delivered honest to goodness value, and whatever I'm going to pitch is incredibly on point with whatever my message was. But I don't end with the pitch. Then I like to end with sort of a uplifting, heartwarming story. So that, I know that was 30 seconds, Chandler. I know it was. Maybe inflationary, an inflationary 30. We are in an inflationary environment.
That's good. I love this. This is super helpful, Josh. If you don't mind, unshare your screen.
Yep.
Guys, if you're watching, if you're listening to this on the podcast, obviously you can see this on the podcast, or you're just going to hear it. But if you want to see the video version, go to the YouTube channel. You can see all the visuals and the chat.
And you want to see Chandler's smile, this Smile Club direct model that he is. You want to see that. Okay.
That's also the YouTube channel.
That is. I mean, come on, get your money's worth, people.
So we got our demo, we got our speaking structure, so that we're delivering a great talk. Let's talk about booking your first gigs, especially. Mm-hmm. So for our authors out there who are looking to book their first gigs, or even non-authors, and I want to zero in on that for just a second, but then I want to go advanced.
Okay.
And go, really scaling.
Yeah. So if you're a newbie, your first 50 gigs are going to be 1,000 times harder to book than your next 500, because you don't have word of mouth. Almost no one's seen you speak in person. You don't have any of that spinoff. You probably don't have a video yet because you don't got a venue to pitch it in. So 2 things to do to book your first handful of gigs. First, you should do some practice gigs at stuff that you can get up and speak for free in your local community. So Toastmasters, local, church, hey, could I speak to your youth if the message is appropriate? Anything free where there's a gathering of 10 or more people, doesn't matter. I would argue you could even go live on social media to begin to kind of work out the kinks of your message. So you're ready to eventually film a thing. Those first 10 gigs, 2 things. Number one, it needs to be, you don't have speaking credibility yet, but you probably have reputational credibility. So your first 10 gigs have to be, most likely, someone local and someone that already knows, likes, and trusts you. Okay. So that's the pond you're fishing out of. It's admittedly going to be quite a small pond, but that is the only pond you should be fishing out of for your first 10 gigs. If you try to go wide too quickly, you're going to be discouraged and you're going to go to folks prematurely when you should have waited until you had your ducks in a row. Now, what do you send those folks? Just because I know Chandler and I don't yet have a video doesn't mean I should be sloppy about the way that I approach him and say, hey, could I be on your podcast or your next author event? In lieu of a demo video, I would put together a beautiful, thoughtful, one-page PDF that is a bit of an outline of a message I'm thinking about that's hyper contextualized to his audience. Like, hey, I know you're having an author event. I know you got great folks on this. Here's a very specific aspect of kind of the speaking industry that I could cover. Here would be my main points. Actually, here's sort of a resource I've doodled up for folks, and pitch it hyper contextualized. So this is not a one page I'm blasting out to a bunch of different people and kind of hoping and praying that it works. I'm going to, does this person know me? Do they like me? Do they trust me? And then can I have a thoughtful overture? Speaking is all about persuasion, right? Because Chandler risks his reputation and a check if he was paying me. You're not going to get paid the first 10 gigs before he knows if I'm any good, right? He would book me for his event today, September, but his event might not be happening until January. So he's not going to know until January whether or not he made a good decision. So anything I can do through this PDF to be like, bro, I'm coming in hot. The oven is preheated. I have thought through exactly how I'm going to deliver value. I'm not just being sloppy and say, hey, you know me, like put me on your stage. Like, look, I have done the work. Here's what I want to share to your people. That even by reading that PDF, you're going to go, oh yeah, this is a gap in our conference, and I think this would deliver value. You do that well, you can book your first 10 gigs.
That's really good. So super solid advice. Now let's fast forward. Hey, we've got our first gigs booked. I'd love to ask about, well, actually, first I'll ask a specific question on referrals.
Yes.
Any tips on once you've started doing your first gigs? I would assume that referrals are, because I love that framework earlier. 60% of folks said, I saw them speak, someone I trust saw them speak, or I saw a video of them speaking. So it seems like referrals, speaking, actually getting out there and speak, and then the demo video are the three big ways to book. So I would assume that that's the best way to scale up from the start. Any tips on getting referrals to other meeting planners or people who can book you?
So when you say referrals, do you mean kind of shaking the tree from the audience of 500 people, or circling back to that single decision maker and trying to get them to introduce you to two or three others? Which specifically are you asking about?
Circling back to that decision maker. I'm assuming that's most effective, but correct me.
Yeah, well, two things. The audience, that's going to take care of itself. Again, if you crush it,
right.
And how do you know if you're crushing it? I would say like a standing ovation tends to be sort of false evidence. That tends to be more about your ability to kind of emotionally regulate a roller coaster of a crescendo towards the end of your speech. If your client uses hyperbolic language, best ever, been doing this for 10 years. People were hounding me about how amazing you were. Do you have offers on site? Do you have people like chasing you down on site, giving you their business card, their information, telling you about their event? That's when you know in the net promoter score, 7 or 8, right? They don't move. Below 7, they spread bad information about you. 9 to 10, they on your behalf spread the word. This is how you know that. And then also, do you have the Beatles effect? Do you have a line of people wanting to buy your book, get you to sign the book, take a selfie, ask you a question? If you have those sorts of things happening, you know you're crushing it. Now, getting that referral specifically from the person, I'm sorry, let me say one more thing about the audience. I would say at that 55-minute mark. So if your goal at an event is to get more gigs, not necessarily to sell a book, but if it is specifically to get more gigs, at that 55-minute mark, I would say, hey, I imagine there are a handful of you in here who have the authority or are planning your own event. That's one of my goals. If that's something that would be helpful to you, this message, come forward. With these folks, I don't like to do the QR code, scan this, fill out a form. Again, they're risking their reputation. You're going to be working intimately with them anyway. I want them to come forward, give me their information, and I will kind of track them down. Now, circling back to that decision maker, it's next to impossible to do this on the front end of the booking. Because again, the event hasn't happened. They don't know if you're going to blow their mind or not. So what we do this is at scale, so this is a bit more 201, is that we have a 4-question survey that goes out the day after the event. Okay, so timing is very important because if that person is on a high from your talk, they're going to be on a high very quickly after that event. Okay, so a survey goes out, and if on that survey they rate the speech a 9 or a 10, we do two things. Number one, we generate a discount code to book another speech within the next 6 months with either the same speaker or one of our other speakers. And then secondly, we ask for an introduction at that point. Okay, so if someone rates 9 or 10, the goal there is get more business. If they rate 7 or 8, our goal is not to try to get more business, it's to learn what didn't go well, what kind of underwhelmed you. So I'm not trying to resell that person. If it's a 6 or under, and out of our 1,200 gigs a year, I would say we have 5 or 6 of these, we refund them. We give them the money back. We say, we wanted this to be your best speaker ever. That didn't happen. From your perspective, here's your money back. I hope you trust us again in the future. Okay, so that's kind of the 3 categories of people, and that's based on the data and the evidence within the Net Promoter Score. Now, a bit more analog, you will notice if you murder on stage, that person that brought you, they're going to chase you down within a half hour of your speech, and then they go, oh my gosh, that, we thought you were going to be good, but that, my goodness. At that point, you start going, hey, that means the world to me. How often do you guys have this event? Is it always the same? Then you can start to, then they are basically saying, well, for the love of God, would you please resell me? Mm-hmm. Would you please resell me? So if that happens, I try to begin to seed that conversation. Again, that's not being manipulative. It's like they risked their reputation. I murdered. Now they're circling back and saying, please, how can we engage you more?
Cool. Man, so good. I got about 40 questions left, but
perfect. No problem.
We're running low on time.
40 questions, 30 seconds. You so selfish son of a gun.
I'm going to go quick case study because I got to get this in.
Yeah.
So we've talked some in private about, scaling up our speaking.
Yes.
We probably speak at, 30 to 40 gigs a year, maybe a little bit more as an organization. Probably.
How many speakers is that total that would do those 30 to 40?
I'd say about 5.
Okay.
5. And so 10 or 15 of those are me, and then the rest are spread out across our speaking team.
I'm going to interrupt you frequently here. Okay. Do you determine who goes to which gig, or certain gigs are like, we don't want Chandler Jr., we just want Chandler?
We determine it typically. Yeah, there will certainly be some events like that. I would say most frequently we determine it, though.
Roger that.
And so I guess my big question would be if you were us, and I've got, a bunch of specific questions around this. I doubt we'll have time to get to most of them. But how would you approach scaling up those gigs? Both, I look at this separately. Maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. But okay, because I feel like I was doing maybe 20, 30, 40 gigs a year. Mm-hmm. I'm like, all right, I want to narrow that way back. But now I'm at a point where, okay, I'm down to do a lot more for bigger audiences, which I think those opportunities are there. But I haven't been super strategic about all the stuff you're saying and really positioning myself as a speaker. So it's almost like doing a little bit of reset. So anyways, back to the question, how would you look at me booking more gigs for me specifically and booking more gigs for our speaking team? Like, what would your approach be? What would you focus on? That sort of thing.
How many gigs a year would be ideal for you to do?
I would say probably 10 to 15, well, maybe up to 15 or 20 if they're big
if they're the right gigs.
Unlimited if they're in the Texas area or like Austin, Dallas, Houston. So I've got kind of like that localized event approach that my team's kind of working.
Understood.
Obviously the big national events.
Understood. Okay. So if your answer to that question was, 30, 40, 50 or more, then I would branch you towards your goal should be getting on with different speakers bureaus. Okay. And I'm going partially down this road because I imagine there are a few people that are thinking, yeah, I would like to do 30 to 40 to 50. So with those folks, instead of you trying to pitch yourself to the end decision maker, your goal should be to pitch yourself to the 24 reputable speakers bureaus out there. Close a certain percentage of the reputable ones. Be picky there. There are some shady ones out there. If you're not intimidated by the other speakers on the bureau, then you should probably just exit that website and look elsewhere. But thoughtfully try to get them on board, because when we talk about that reputational risk, particularly in the corporate and business world. Now, this is anecdotal. Again, I'm not an expert in the corporate space, so only trust what I'm about to say 70%. But my understanding there is that in the corporate world, bigger budgets, even higher risk reputationally, I would argue, they're often less open to individual speakers pitching them or kind of pursuing individual speakers. And instead, they have a handful of bureaus they work with, they've had longstanding relationships with, and they just go, hey, the last folks you sent us, Michelle Poehler, Kyle Sheely, they killed it for us. Who should we have this year? Give us a half dozen names and we'll choose a few. So Chandler, if your answer was, 24 or more gigs, then I would say you need to go the bureau route, earn those folks' trust. And if you go that route, it can't be what I understand the current model is, which to you, the importance is, getting self-publishing out there, doing a pitch, these sorts of things. That's not how those bureaus are paid. That's not how those agents at bureaus are paid. For them, it's about the check at the gig. So even though that's not your priority, you would need to make that your priority for at least booking that gig. Now, because it's a hired gig, not all of those gigs would allow you to pitch. Mm-hmm. And again, that could be something you say, hey, I need to know in advance. Because sure, the $20,000 check, I'll take it, but I really want to be able to, appropriately pitch at the event. And if they're not going to allow it, then I'll just bow out ahead of time. Now, for your situation, you said 15 or so. I would say, you need to set up teams and processes of probably 1 to 2 people to do this in-house, because 15 gigs a year and you're going to need to be kind of picky, like turning down the $20,000 check because they won't let you pitch. That's going to irritate a bureau. Bureaus aren't going to be on board for that, even if they're like, this guy does a good job. I like him. I like his profile, the ink stuff, the business he's built. But there wouldn't be enough meat on the bone for those bureaus to kind of, quote, waste website space or proposal space pitching you. So I think you need an internal team that can go after leads, go after events, target the ideal events. And then the good news is, if you were working with a bureau and they didn't want to book you, well, they're going to book one of their other reputable speakers. With your situation, you can use Chandler as the bait, right? And then the branching logic becomes, is this a perfect event for Chandler? If so, let's move forward with Chandler. If not, let's downsell, one of our other speakers. But I wouldn't lead with the other speakers, because you're going to have kind of the most shiny reputation and stuff that will grab attention. And then you can focus just on having one killer demo video, putting your profile out there. And then if it's not a fit for you, pitching one of the other speakers on your team.
Love it. Last question on this. Sorry, I know we're running right at time here, a little bit over.
We're good.
Is how would you find events in both national and local? We've got the team that's kind of looking, but I feel like it's a little bit different in the corporate and business space. They're just kind of hunting for, hey, okay, let's find events in Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. Or let's find big entrepreneur conferences, which we haven't been able to find kind of like an aggregated database for that. Any tips on that side of things?
Yeah, it's a little, sometimes those people kind of tuck back their information because otherwise they do get hammered and, spammed from a bunch of different people, wanting them to speak at the event. There's a variety of ways, but I think the two that would probably kind of give you the most fruit is, number one, look at speakers with other similar profiles, messages, and go, okay, let me, using the Wayback Machine and bracketed Google queries, let me find and AI, let me find a list of, 300 events that these names might not be the relevant ones, but Gary Vaynerchuk has spoke at, and Alex Hormozy has spoke at. So sort of like, folks that are like, okay, I feel like I'm kind of in that lane. So that could be one thing. What events have those folks spoken at? And, I think I would be a good follow-up offer. So that's a way to go about it. And another way to go about it would be, unfortunately, there's no lookalike generator for for corporate speaking gigs, but you can kind of force it. Meaning, if you think about the gigs you've done over the past few years, I would start with a nucleus of the 12 perfect events. So you go, here are the 12 events. Like, I loved speaking at it. It brought in good business. The decision maker was super happy. I had a great time. Like, these are, my goodness, if I could have 15 of these a year, I would love it. So I would start with that nucleus, and then I would focus on job title of that decision maker. And I would start doing cold database searches of like that industry, this job. Like, show me more people like that person who was the person that brought me into the event, and begin to kind of whittle from there. That will get you like a nice, meaty, sizable database that you can start to make overtures at.
Killer. Incredible. Guys, hopefully it's probably pretty obvious at this point why Josh and his team have booked over 5,000 gigs. I
only have 7 hours more of material, Chandler. We're done? Are we landing the plane?
We're going to have to have you come back for like a 301 or something.
Listen, I'm just trying to get booked at a gig at your event. It's all this was.
I'm a 9 or 10 right now.
It's all this was.
This is good. Well, final question, Josh. Parting piece of advice for people looking to break through in the speaking world, and also kind of attached to that. Where's the best place for people to go to find out more about you, to, book your speakers, go through Youth Speaker University, that sort of thing?
Sure. So I'll give the pitch thing, and then I'll give the parting words of wisdom. Our agency, we only sign 2 speakers a year. If you're not in the youth and education space, we're not a great fit for you. If you're not already doing it more than 100K a year in gigs in the youth and education space, we're not a great fit for you. If you're doing that kind of thing, reach out. We can triple your business. Easy, no problem, if you're the right kind of folk. If you are in the youth and education space, but you're just getting started, Youth Speaker University is, as you noticed in this conversation with Chandler, it's just like I am. It is neurotic. It is OCD. It is incredibly methodical and incredibly exhaustive and step by step. Again, if you're in the corporate space, I would say don't sign up for our thing. There are other things out there that would be great, but if you're like, man, students or adults that work with students, I would say our thing is 100% a fit for you, and you can kind of do it yourself until you get to that level. And you need an agency, or congrats, you don't need an agency. You're killing it on your own. I'll be happy for you either way. I think my parting words of wisdom that is contrary to a lot of what I see kind of preached in the speaking space is like, you got to think of yourself as a singer-songwriter in the music business. And step one is you got to get that speech incredible. You've got to get that speech incredible. Be patient with that. Don't start trying to film the demo video too soon. Don't start trying to market yourself too soon. Make the product extraordinary and then start to move forward. Places I get inspiration as the creative side of the speaking business myself, I love watching one-man shows, things like Billy Crystal's 700 Sundays, another gentleman's one-man show. It's like my mother's Jewish, my father's Italian, and I'm in therapy. They, for 90 minutes, hold an audience and take them on an emotional roller coaster. Now, they don't teach you a thing, but they take you on a roller coaster. Stand-up comedians, phenomenal at presenting information with all sorts of tones, all sorts of angles, all sorts of personality styles. And then preachers. Even if you're not religious, man, you watch a preacher, the visuals will be stunning. You watch folks like T.D. Jakes, Stephen Furtick, Craig Groeschel. You will see different personalities, but you will see engaging presentation, clear takeaways, stunning visuals that back up their message. Soak yourself in that and get your speech in a phenomenal spot. That is your product. That is what you're selling. Then when you go out, you will have much greater success, because at the end of the day, folks are risking their reputation. So let your speech be worthy of someone risking their reputation on first.
Drop the mic.
There you go.
I love it. Guys, give it up for Josh. Check out Youth Speaker University or Top Speakers if you're looking to book a youth speaker. This was amazing. Thank you, Josh.
Yes, sir. Pleasure.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you can be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. All right, number 1, I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help the podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode. If you're on the fence about scheduling a publishing consultation call with my team, maybe you're not quite ready for that, I've got some free training that I think will be really helpful for you. All right, all you have to do is go to register to sign up. Go to selfpublishing.com/free training. When you do, you're also going to get a free digital copy of my new book, Published. And on that training, you're going to learn the next steps, so how to implement with your book. So how to write, how to publish, how to launch successfully. So go to register right now at selfpublishing.com/free training. I'll see you there.